Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda, and welcome to my channel. This channel, the Ignition Time channel, is about the country, the economy, as well as our money. The truth is, the US economy is having a hard time rebooting itself. Is it too hot? Is it too cold? In fact, it's both. I'll discuss the impact of the economic recovery and the nuances of the economic recovery and how it impacts unemployment benefits. Here's the headline of an article on your screen from the New York Times. Is the US economy too hot or too cold? Yes. The economy is a riddle, but clearly it's having a harder time rebooting itself than had seemed possible in the spring. We'll provide you with a link to this article and all of our resources in the description section below, so make sure you check it out. I'm going to quote directly from the article. In the mid-2021 economy, employers are offering higher pay to attract scarce workers. Airports and car lots are bustling, and a GDP report that is due out next week will probably show blockbuster growth. It is also an economy in which inflation is outstripping pay gains for many workers. The share of the population working remains far below pre-pandemic levels, and bond markets are priced at levels that suggest a high risk of returning to sluggish growth in the years ahead. So what is the bottom line? The bottom line is that the economy is having a harder time rebooting itself than had seemed likely in the early days of spring. Many Americans were getting vaccinated and stimulus payments were hitting checking accounts. Now, it is critical for the Biden administration, for the White House and the Federal Reserve to achieve a smooth transition to an economy where we can live the American dream, where our fellow Americans can earn a respectable wage, can put food on the table, can make rent, and can keep the lights on without significant inflation. But folks, it's not clear how long that will take. In fact, I'll quote from the New York Times article. But for that to happen, a huge mismatch between economy-wide demand for goods and services and the supply of them will need to be resolved. Here's a quote on your screen from Karen Dinnan, who's a Harvard economist and a former official at the Federal Reserve and Treasury. This is what she says. I think we should have expected there to be frictions in getting the economy reopened after this unprecedented shock. We've seen serious frictions, and it's totally reasonable to expect those frictions to continue. Here's what's going on, folks. Consumer demand for goods and services is high. More and more Americans are spending their pent-up savings, are spending the stimulus payments, spending unemployment benefits, and higher wages are actually resulting for those who are essentially fortunate enough to get back to work. In fact, retail sales were 20% higher in June 2021 compared to 2019. But there's the other side to this equation. Businesses are having a much harder time increasing production to fill demand, and they had not expected this. In fact, a lot of economists and forecasters had not expected this in the spring. This is particularly glaring in the case of cars, where a shortage of microchips has actually strained production. Now, supply shortages are actually evident across all sorts of industries, because the latest research shows that there are complaints from furniture makers, chemical products, machinery, and electrical products about the difficulties in fulfilling demand. In fact, let's show you this chart on your screen. Inflation bites for workers. Now, when we factor in rising prices, pay raises don't look so great. Let's take a look at this chart. This is pretty astonishing. Even though the average hourly pay and the non-managerial pay has gone up, as you can see, in June 2021 relative to the start of the year, inflation has gone up significantly. Here's what this means. Let's say you are making $15 an hour, and let's say you make $20 an hour now. This is just an example. But a gallon of milk cost you $3, but now it's costing you $3.50. Again, this is just an example. This means that even though you make more money, the fact that you are spending significantly more money actually puts you at a disadvantage, because when you look at your bank account, you're like, hey, where did the money go? I thought I had made more money. And this is the predicament. In fact, price inflation is steep enough to actually impact wage increases, to actually take away the benefit of wage increases. So, are workers better off? At this moment in time, the answer to that question is no. Here's another interesting quote from this New York Times article. Because of the unique circumstances of the post-pandemic reopening, those numbers most likely understate the pay increase a typical worker has experienced, but the gist is clear. Workers are gaining higher wages, yes, but they are also paying more for the things that they buy. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Are you one of those workers who is essentially bringing home more money, but at the end of the day, you don't have more money left over? Here's another factor. Rents are starting to increase sharply. Businesses are actually paying more for supplies and labor. Also, the producer price index, which actually tracks the costs of these supplies and services that companies buy, rose 1% in June, which was an increase from April and May. Basically, this means that inflation is indeed happening. Here's a quote on your screen from Paul Ashworth, who's the chief US economist at Capital Economics, and he said this: "We call it a whiff of stagflation. Real growth isn't weak, but it's just not as strong as we thought it was going to be. There was a lot of optimism, and now things are coming back to earth a little bit." As you know, a lot of businesses are complaining of labor shortages. In fact, 26 states all across the country, led by Republican governors, actually decided to end the unemployment benefits early. And now, let me get to how this impacts unemployment benefits. If inflation increases, and if people are actually returning back to work, unfortunately, unemployment benefits won't continue, because at the end of the day, what a lot of these Republican states want is people to get back to work, and they don't really look at inflation when it comes to unemployment benefits. So the impact of rising wages, the impact of people getting back to work is so significant that politically there is likely to be a very little will to actually extend unemployment benefits. Where does all of this leave the US economy? Folks, here's the bottom line. A lot of work still needs to be done to allow the economy to fully reopen. Individuals in travel, leisure, entertainment, and hospitality who are now finally starting to get back to work are finding themselves in a situation where their jobs are redundant. In many cases, their jobs have been eliminated. They are also finding that they may not even want to go back to their old jobs. And this is a challenge that is being faced by individuals in travel, leisure, entertainment, and hospitality. The impact on unemployment benefits is this: if the economy is reopening, it is going to lead to the end of the unemployment benefits, and there will be no further extension. However, it is my belief and it is my prediction that specific states can and should start to take action to help their local residents, specifically residents that were impacted in certain industries like travel, leisure, entertainment, and hospitality. I also talked about furniture makers earlier. So again, a lot of work has to be done, and there is no shortage of demand from Americans who feel that they have the cash to spend. But at the end of the day, the economy needs to find a new equilibrium of prices, wages, input and output, and until then, things are not going to be where they should be. We are not going to be able to get back to the pre-pandemic economy, which was the best economy we had had in a long time. That's where things stand, everyone. Please click the like button. Please click subscribe. Please enable notifications. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time. This right here is a little bit of information about me. Please click like and subscribe. That is your way of supporting our channel. I don't do this for viewers. I don't do this for subscribers, but it does support our channel when you decide to appreciate our efforts. A lot of effort goes into the production of each video. My analysis of this is as follows. The economy is neither too hot nor too cold, but there are certain sectors, there are certain pockets of the economy, there are certain individuals who have been left behind, and unemployment benefits should be extended for them, but this cannot be done at the federal level, because the only thing that the federal government can do is implement something that all states across the country follow. This has to be a state-specific response from local governors to help residents in specific sectors that have been impacted the most, because there are still pockets of insecurity. There are still pockets of desperation in our country where individuals need a significant amount of help. And now it's time for the states to step up, because the federal government will not be able to pass more stimulus, will not be able to essentially extend unemployment benefits, because there is no political will between the Republicans and the Democrats in Washington, D.C. Once again, please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.